All right, guys, this is being recorded, everyone.
So in this, in this time block, I want to give an overview of WeFunder, an overview of TurboSBIR, kind of talk about the non-dilutive grant funding coming from the government and how Rupak is driving that, talk about kind of equity crowdfunding and the growth of the industry and how companies are taking advantage of it. Both kind of fit this common theme of the democratization of capital. A lot of entrepreneurs are pursuing multiple different avenues to be able to generate capital for their business. Obviously, if you can get non-dilutive grant funding, no better capital than that. So I've been really impressed by Rupak. I've been working with him for 6 to 9 months, and kind of understanding these different kind of outlets that entrepreneurs are using to generate capital. A ton of parallels in what he's building and what we built at WeFunder, and look forward to kind of sharing that. If you have any questions, please make sure to just put them in the Q&A or the chat box.
Yeah.
And we will make sure to carve out a chunk of time after we both give an overview, and we can answer questions in real time as well. So Rupak, do you want to get started and kind of give overview of TurboSBIR, kind of the ethos, how founders are using it, and kind of give everybody a baseline there?
Yeah, sure. I'll start with an intro because some of the folks from WeFunder side might not know about me, about us. So brief background, PhD scientist, got my PhD in Cambridge in the UK, came out here to the US to do a postdoc, UCSD, spent 4.5 years or whatever at UCSD, did a postdoc, so long life in academia. Thought that I didn't want to become a professor at that point and went out to industry, went and worked with a biotherapeutics company, Inhibrx in San Diego. In the 3 years we were there, we took that company public, which was great. And in 2019, we won some money from a couple of folks who sold their previous company to Google. And with that money, we started OmniSync. And the company has been around now for about 18 months. And our goal is to become the single sign-on platform for applicants to seek out, find, and apply for all kinds of government grants and contracts, which basically is completely non-dilutive, has no debt associated with it, has no equity that you have to give to the government at all, but it's money given to small businesses and startups to support their product development initiatives and then eventually commercialization in the market. So founders generally of these startup companies who are developing some kind of innovative solution for any particular market, they really need to look at that avenue of fundraising as a way to fund their R&D efforts at the time when investors generally will not believe that it's possible. They may view it as something that's too early or too high risk, or something that just takes a little bit more effort and money from somebody else before they can become interested in funding the startup. Or it's also for companies that have already gotten funding from investors and are executing on one pipeline, one product, and one area, but then now they have R&D effort that they want to do for the next line of products that they want to make. But again, investors are not going to fund that because they want you to keep your focus and execute on this primary product that you're building. But you know that you need to keep R&D up to be competitive with everybody else. And so that's a nice way to keep funding your R&D pipeline in your startup. So right now we have upwards of 130, 150 companies that are working with us. A lot of them are on this call, and the way they do it is basically, we arrange these workshops for every agency. The software walks you through step by step for everything you need to do. We help you submit, we help you QC everything, we help you review stuff. We have grant writers if you need them, but it's really a one-stop shop for everything to do with government grants and contracts, and we can help you identify the right ones to apply for. And the right time for you. The timing is kind of critical as well. So that's kind of the spiel on us. And then
Rupak, can you give some nuance? Like, what is kind of the nuance of kind of what you're building, and like, what are some of the hidden things that may not be immediately obvious when kind of working in this world of finding grant funding, and kind of how you're helping kind of like, what are those nuances along the way that make what you do work?
Yeah, I mean, the first one is generally always like, what grant is out there for me to apply for, and companies often think that they have to find this really specific thing that somebody wants to fund, right, to apply for. Now, that's true for certain agencies, but other agencies cast a really wide net, because I've been told by agency contracting officers and programming officers that they want to fund things that they don't even know there is a problem that the company solves. They don't even know of the problem. So they gave me examples, right? Like before I used an iPhone, I didn't even know that I needed an iPhone, right? Or something like that. So they want to find those sorts of things. And so for companies, they try doing some searches, they don't find anything. They're like, oh, there's nothing available for me to apply for. This is not correct. Like there's so much out there in terms of a wide net being casted from the agencies that, and we kind of know that, so we kind of can educate our startups on those sorts of things. But that's one of the big nuance that most companies don't realize, that it's out there to be attained and to be applied for, to give you a shot in the door. That's one of the big ones that we find. The second one that we find is the actual proposal preparation, obviously, where people think just by default, they're like, oh yeah, I need a grant writer. Or this is like the industry is kind of like tax prep software, right? Like or before tax prep software came in, you would think that the only way to do your taxes was get a CPA. There's just no other way. And then tax prep software came in and made it possible for people to DIY taxes. But also, if the taxes get a little complicated, you can DIY maybe 50% of it or maybe 90% of it, and get that expert human help, the grant writer or whatever, at the last 10% of the stretch. And then still, it's much more affordable than getting the CPA right at the start and having them do everything for you, right? So that's the other nuance that we really help them understand, that look, you don't want to spend 10K on this. It's not worth right now for you to do that. But we can help you do all of these things that you don't need the writer for. And then finally get to the part where you really, the writer can really help you, like, change the game in terms of increasing your, the value prop, the way you're presenting it, whatever, right at the end, right, when you need them. So we kind of have help that sort of nuance as well. And then finally, submission is one of the big ones, right? Like everyone's like, the government makes a great case for trying to make things seem as if it's all very friendly to people, and we're doing a lot to like ease up things, and we want to work with small business and all that. But they don't realize that the language that they use is alien to everybody else outside of the government. And so they build these submission portals, right, where they think that they're like, yeah, we've built software already for people to come in and submit. But then you go in and then you find all these submission things, and they're labeled and they're designed in such a way that nobody outside the government can even understand how or what those things even mean, even if you have all the documentation like done to file. So I've had lots of companies go in there and like, wait, what is this? Do I need to do this point? Or what do I upload here? And this doesn't seem intuitive at all. And that's kind of where we can come in and really help that sort of end process as well, to make sure everything gets submitted right. Because over 60% of grants get turned down because of compliance problems, not because the technology was wrong or whatever.
Totally. It's a very like kind of intimidating kind of world where it's just like there's all these different pockets and all these different processes for all these different channels, and you're just simplifying it and making it very user friendly. In a lot of ways, that is the democratization force that you're creating, where it's like you don't have to be an expert and know where all this stuff is and know all of these little details. We have a rich team that can kind of simplify this and make it super user friendly. And that's the value in this kind of theme of democratization.
Yeah, and you don't need to have 10K ready to go out of pocket, right? That's the other part. Like these consultants who charge you that much money, a lot of times they will pick and choose which startup to work with, because their model relies on only picking the ones who have the money and who are able to win or whatever, because their model is like it's like they only pick those guys because they're not scalable. We work with every single startup who comes with us. Sorry, we work with every single startup who comes to us and says, I want some help. And we will get them to a point where they stand competitively in front of everybody else. So despite doing that, our success rates are awesome, right? With working with those sorts of folks. That's the other side of democratization as well. Like it shouldn't be that just because I pay you a better tip, I get a better service. We just don't view it like that. Like that service needs to be available for all folks who are capable and eligible to apply, right? And in a lot of ways, WeFunder is doing a lot of that too. I mean, I know so many people who are like saying that the VC world is sleeping on the whole equity crowdfunding space. So would love to, Justin, to get a gauge on, well, one, like your background. I'm sure a lot of folks from OmniSync side don't know you at all. So
Yeah.
it would be great to get your background and a little bit of how you've been helping WeFunder to get to where it is.
Yeah, for sure. So, a little background on me. Originally from Los Angeles. I live in San Diego now. I started my career actually in sales at LinkedIn, and I've got an old LinkedIn sales buddy that joined this call from LinkedIn. So, what's up, Jordan? You're one of the OGs. But I really lift my chops. I really got my start professionally at a nonprofit called Kiva. Kiva.org is a global organization that facilitates about $300 million of 0% interest microloans around the world. And it's funded by kind of retail investors investing $25 at 0% interest to help a farmer in Africa, buy more sheep. It's a beautiful model, and I was responsible for launching the Kiva US program, so getting Kiva loans into the hands of entrepreneurs all over the US. I was there for 5 years. We facilitated about 5,000 micro loans. Again, these were $5,000 and $10,000. So, it was very, very, very early, early mom and pop shop kind of businesses. But I met an entrepreneur at Kiva who was like, I quit my job, I moved to Florida, I bought a boat, and I started a boat charter business. And I was like, like, that's not rocket science. That seems plausible. I could probably do that. And literally a year after that conversation, I left Kiva, moved to San Diego, bought a boat, and started running boats down here in San Diego. No prior boat experience or anything. It was quite a journey. I've been doing that for 4 years, and when I finally got the business to a place where it's like we're getting customers, the marketing channels are sound, like we've got this whole machine in motion. We started hiring out captains to run the boats, and that gave me the opportunity to jump into something fresh. And my core team at Kiva had gone to WeFunder, and WeFunder is really just a massive scaling up of what what Kiva was doing. One thing that kind of a strong parallel between my days at Kiva and what we're doing at WeFunder is, Kiva, generally when folks were going out and getting loans, it was like, we need your debt to income ratio, we need your tax statements, we need, all of these kind of financial measures in order to qualify for a small loan. And we said, let's rethink this thing. Let's think about social underwriting, where if you can get 25 friends to invest $25, you qualify for a loan. And that was our kind of basis for launching Kiva, was social underwriting and using the crowd to democratize access, where maybe you don't have the debt to income ratio, or maybe you've had a prior bankruptcy, or maybe you don't have 3 years of tax returns. You can kind of lean on the kind of character of your community to drive, to get this early opportunity to grow your business. WeFunder is really that on a bigger scale, where it's like, hey, if you've got investors and you've got community and you've got customers and friends and family and investors that are interested in what you're doing, that will unlock exposure and impressions to a broader crowd. WeFunder has over 1 million investors, and the real ethos is, if you can generate capital and help and kind of get the capital from your community, then we'll open it up to our community. And, on average, 40% of the capital raised comes from WeFunder's investors. But I actually want to kind of highlight a separate point, which is the democratization piece. Again, the kind of theme of this webinar, where, for TurboSBIR and what you're doing with OmniSync, it's really about like, hey, we're going to take all this complex stuff and make it super user friendly, so that it's available, so that anybody can access it. In a lot of ways, WeFunder is doing the same thing when it comes to SEC compliance, investment contracts, legal, all of the different aspects that go into fundraising that can be really expensive, hiring a lawyer. And that's why traditionally it's been like fundraising was for $25,000 checks because it was expensive to be able to accept an investment.
Right.
What WeFunder creates is not only are we managing all the investment contracts, all the compliance, all the legal and operations, we're also doing it in a way where you can accept investments from anybody, rich or poor, with no minimum. So you can accept investments from friends and family and from customers and from people in your community at a dollar level that they can come in at, and they get to share the upside of your success even if it's at $100. And so the democratization of WeFunder has really been the kind of driving force between the behind the operation since 2012. I think that it might be worth looking at our public benefit charter and the impact report that we released last month that shows kind of the impact to date and the kind of mission around democratization. That's a core kind of aspect of our cultural fiber.
No, I totally agree, man. I mean, I love the fact that you guys are a public benefit corp, right? It's like so upfront, like, very straight right from day one. Like, and the fact that, I mean, I also see the democratization as you now don't need to know every single VC or every single angel, or you don't need to have intros to every one of those. You can get on there, you can get that visibility through a platform like yours. And it's not just domestic. I mean, what's really impressive is the visibility on WeFunder can go international. Like, you can get investments from all sorts of countries that are so hungry looking at that the American startup ecosystem. Everyone wants to be a part of that, right? Like, everyone's like, oh, I'm sitting in India and it's like, I want to fund this company called Facebook that's going gung ho right now. How do I do that? And with compliance, like, people don't realize how much goes into WeFunder's backend to make sure the compliance is actually tight, because you can't, and this is a big myth, right? Like, you can't go out and start taking people's money for your company without, without compliance issues there.
Right.
And that's what WeFunder really helps navigate. And you don't, I mean, I can tell you firsthand, those legal contracts will cost you thousands of dollars if you go and do it yourself, try and do it yourself even. And this is basically available for, I mean, for the lack of a better word, right, free, pretty much upfront.
Right.
And so would love to, any other myths that Justin, you want to bust right now? It would be a great time to.
Well, yeah, I think that, the reason I've been so excited about, my connection with Rupak and what we're doing, what OmniSync is doing and what WeFunder is doing is, in reality, founders are generally pursuing multiple different channels for capital. And I think that, there's an appropriate kind of, it's like the more options and the more channels you have, the quicker you're going to be able to raise the capital and focus on the business. And for most founders, they're not professional fundraisers. They want to raise the money as quickly as possible and focus on growing the business. And I see WeFunder and OmniSync playing very similar roles in that we're going to make it easier and we're going to make it faster for you to get to the capital that you need to be able to get back to growing the business. Obviously, different different channels there as to how that's accomplished. But the upside is huge, and I think that there's a play for both, especially if you have kind of a science or an intellectual property or something unique that kind of connects to the non-dilutive grant opportunities that exist out there from the government. On the WeFunder end, it's a little bit more open-ended in that, like, hey, if you've got interested stakeholders that want to invest in what you're doing, you can streamline that process very easily. And it's a big open door, both in terms of who we accept on the founder side, as well as who's able to come in and invest on the investor side.
I can tell you the overlap is amazing here. Like, so for example, anyone who does well with non-dilutive grant funding goes to WeFunder and says that, look, I have this technology is now validated by the NSF or validated by the NIH or the Air Force or whatever. That does so much better on WeFunder, right? Because now you have the community seeing this really strong validation piece from a government entity, right? That has gone through review and all that. And then on the other side, when companies that do well on WeFunder and have money come to apply for government grants and contracts. I know for a fact that some of the agencies really are trying so hard to get the investment community involved to partake and collaborate on the fund to match funding. Basically, the government puts in $1, investors come and match that another dollar, and that gives you the best of both worlds because now you have money to commercialize and do all the fun stuff on the actual marketing side, and also you have all the money you need to keep developing your high risk moonshot R&D that'll keep propelling your company forward and keep it differentiated from everybody else, right? So the overlap is really, really awesome.
Well, I also think, Rupak, one thing that you mentioned early on in the conversation is, hey, when we got that $1 million check from a VC, everyone wanted to talk to us. No one wanted to be the first mover. Then we get a VC and everybody wants in on it. And that's a very real thing. It's kind of like if you get a big win, it's gonna make that second and that third and that fourth win. Every win becomes a little bit easier as you do that, as you go through that process. So if you have a successful campaign on WeFunder, it makes it a little bit easier to go through that, and they kind of positively reinforce each other. And it's like, hey, we'll go wherever the win is, and we trust that if we can lock that in, it's going to make everything else a little bit easier. And you're kind of leveraging that across those different channels, which is what you did very practically in your fundraise.
Exactly. No. And then the other myth also I keep hearing, and not a myth, but I keep hearing this thing from founders every now and then. I call it like the I just need X, whatever that I just need this, right? And it's always like, no, man, that's not what you will always need, believe me. And that's just a myopic view. Like, for example, I have founders who come in like, look, I just need 50K right now. I was like, no, you don't need 50K right now. What you do need is a plan to get to 200K, and the 50K is just to get to the next milestone, right? But you need that plan to get to the 200K.
The 50K gets you to it's the stepping stone to 100K, which is the stepping stone to 200K. That's how this stuff works.
Yeah, so it's like always a myth that I always want to make sure that I do. And then also, as a founder, you will never stop fundraising, which basically means that at any given point in time, you have to be thinking of a year down the line, where's my money coming from, right? How am I going to raise the next pot of money? Where am I going to raise it from? And so the more you keep doing these things in the hopper, so like WeFunder, I know one of the big value props is that you can keep that page up in like as in it's in your back pocket always. Whenever you have anybody who's interested, they can go, you just throw that link in there, right? And they can go in and put their money in.
Well, that was the big, so on March 15th, there was a set of regulations that came out from the SEC, making equity crowdfunding far more founder friendly. One of the big pieces was you can now raise 5 million in it, which was an expansion from 1 million. And founders are kind of looking at this in a new light where they're saying, okay, like maybe it's that first 200K, then I can use that. But instead of kind of, you have this WeFunder thing in your back pocket, and there's ultimate flexibility where you can pull money quarterly, you can pause the campaign and increase your valuation. There's a lot of things that you can do to have this kind of go in stages. So as the business grows, you can keep building on that base. And again, with each of that, as your business levels up, that base just continues to expand. A lot of times it's like, where do you access new sources of capital? A lot of times it's existing investors doubling down. So that's been a kind of unique piece where it's like you build a base and that base kind of scales up with you over an extended period of time in stages.
Yeah, and the same thing with grants and contracts, right? Like basically, it's a long-term play. Like most companies go about doing this, like thinking that they're gonna, oh yeah, I want to apply for this one grant, and I'm gonna chill out and sit back and relax. And that's just not how the game is played. With investors also, you don't reach one investor and then you hope that investor is gonna fund. Like for our fundraise, at the end, I was looking at my final CRM, investor CRM. I think I spoke to like 50 or 60 plus investor groups, each containing 5 or 10 different investors or whatever on average, right? That's an astronomical number to get that final 5 or 10 or 20 that actually will give you the money, right? The grants and contracts world, not different. There's data out there. that basically says that people who win these things on average are applying to 8 to 10 opportunities every year after year. They just put in, they keep putting. I mean, the last round of effort, I had a company that applied, that put in 4 proposals with the hope that they'll get, and they won 2 out of them, right? Same opportunity. They just put 4 ideas in and they got one, they got 2 out of it. That if that person had put in a single one, no guarantee that he was going to get any of that stuff, right? So,
And does
and
getting one grant make it easier to get that second grant?
it does, to a certain degree, because because it, one, you get a hang of what actually is supposed to happen, what to expect from a grant. Like, first time you're doing this, you're not, you don't know how much of work is actually going to go in there. You don't know all the components that are usually required in all these different proposals, and you're just overwhelmed for the most part, which we help a lot in terms of easing that. But at the end of the day, any first attempt at anything always is generally not your best attempt, and you need that practice generally. So that's kind of where then once you get something rolling, it just becomes so much easier to keep repurposing and reusing content and modifying it, because now you're not creating stuff from scratch. You're modifying, improving stuff that already exists, and that's always an easier path forward.
And that's what we're seeing on WeFunder too, where
Yeah,
it's like on these round twos, it's like I got the game. I went through the learning lessons. I've
yeah.
got a base of investors that I can tap into. I understand how paid media works. Like I have all of these insights from doing it in the first raise. So that second raise, the ability to raise that first 200K on your second raise is much more streamlined and much, much more efficient as a byproduct of like, oh, okay, now I understand how this game is played, and now I can double down and work smarter and be more strategic in how to kind of continue to build this in subsequent rounds.
Hey, you touched upon something really cool there, about the social media aspect, or the paid, acquisition aspect of it. One of the myths that again exist in the space for equity crowdfunding is people think that throw a page up and investors will come. So do you want to talk a little bit about how that world goes?
For sure. Well, I think every company's got a unique mix of assets and kind of what they're working with. And paid media is just one of many different strategies that any given company might take to kind of help with their raise. A lot of times you're seeing companies get a 5 to 10x return, where if I spend $10,000, I'm getting between 50 and $100,000 of investments. And it's really just a simple economics, where it's like, to a certain extent, it's pay to play, but it's also paying for itself if you're getting a relevant return, where it's like, okay, I've got an interesting story to tell, especially in the audience of who's here right now. It's like, these are interesting technologies. These are new development, new kind of big thinking of how of a better world. And if you can articulate that story and tell the story of the company in a really compelling way, it might resonate with a big network of folks. And if you can spend 10,000 to get 75,000 in investments, that's a huge win. And for a lot of companies, that is the case. And it becomes an interesting avenue to generate results around the campaign if you're getting that kind of feedback from the market. It depends every single company. The more kind of generally, it's like moonshots and companies that have huge aspirations and companies that are doing really cool, innovative things, a lot around the climate stuff that resonates on WeFunder, cool new technologies, solar stuff, clean energy. That tends to just have really good kind of meaty conversion when it comes to both WeFunder's audience, the founder pushing it out in their community, PR, paid media. There's a lot of different angles that you can take to get your story out there. The key is, can you tell the right story and can you position it in the right way?
And you guys help a lot with that. I remember, like, when I chatted with you guys, like, there's a lot of help that Justin and his team provides in giving you guidance on how to present your story the right way, what's looking good, what's not looking right, all that stuff. And we do that for our grants and contracts as well. Like, we look at every single thing that goes through our platform and guide the founders. Like, look, this is not, looking competitive, or this is, and this is where you're lacking or whatever.
Well,
So
that's
I'm
the
really
big
glad.
value. that's the big value that we bring is you've
Right.
seen this 100 times. I've seen it 100 times, and you start to grasp these are the best practices.
Right.
These are the routes you go. This is how you can cut as many corners as possible to get to that end result. Um, that insight from as a byproduct of doing it hundreds of times, gives us, gives us the ability to present a clear pathway for founders.
Yeah. And then I think I'll just close with one final thing and then we can go into Q&A. I think the answer is going to be the same for the both of us. I think I'm predicting it, but let's find out. So what's the one thing that if you were to pick one founder attribute that determines success on WeFunder, what you've seen so many successful campaigns, you've seen failed campaigns too. So if you were to draw a common theme, one entrepreneur, one attribute, I guess, of a company or a founder, whatever, that determines success?
I think that like the founder needs to know the story and be willing to go tell the story. One thing that I was really impressed with you, Rupak, is, you were like, yeah, well, I went and had 50 angel conversations. And you learn a lot in going out and pitching it. And I think that if the intention is to just, we've got a great story, we're going to put it on WeFunder and watch the investors roll in, that's not the formula. It's, you got a good story and you're getting traction from investors, you're out pitching it, you're talking about it, like you're putting in the work to kind of maximize the distribution of this story, and you're out telling the story. So I think that there is kind of a proactive attitude that's needed by founders to say, hey, I've got a story to tell and I'm going to go tell it. It doesn't work that it's just like, I'm going to tell it by filling out a campaign page and let it sit on WeFunder.
Yeah, intent, right? And that's the same. I would say the one thing that I've seen most of our winners, the one thing that they all have in common is intense intent.
Yeah.
That they want to do this, they want to do it right, they want to do everything in their power to do it right, and they want to take all the education available to guide them in doing it correctly, as opposed to being arrogant about thinking that they know everything that there is to know about everything, and then just sitting back and hoping that they'll just get people because they're so awesome.
Yeah. It's like ownership and resilience, and kind of a true commitment to the cause.
Right. To the cause, yeah. All right, guys, Justin, you wanna get into Q&A? We have something's coming in on the chat.
So the first one's for you from Peter Muller. Are there problems associated with submitting multiple simultaneous proposal to multiple agencies?
No problems whatsoever. It's the most standard things that most of the winners do, is submit multiple things across multiple agencies. What you can't do is you can't get money from two different agencies to fund the same exact work. That you can't do because that's double dipping. But most often what happens is that you submit the same thing to different places. And if you get money from two different places, you work with the program officers at the different governments to figure out which element of the scope of work they're more interested in, because it's never almost the same. Like even if you get funded for the same project from NIH and NSF, for example, NIH will care more about the health aspect of it. NSF will care about more of the engineering of the product aspect of it. So they'll fund you for those two different activities. So you can absolutely, so most companies, it's very, very normal to have multiple ones across.
The next two are for me, and please feel free to start just dumping questions into the chat. We'll try and do this rapid fire and get as much coverage as possible from the specific questions that you have. I'm going to combine these two. How do you handle the accounting and return structure of such a wide range of investors? And how does WeFunder take care of all the issues associated with getting international funding, how it affects the cap table, dilution, et cetera? So WeFunder works in a unique way where when you launch a campaign, you select a lead investor. And that lead investor kind of represents all of the investors that come in through the round. So we pool all of the investors into a special purpose vehicle. So it's one line on the cap table, and that lead investor votes on any corporate action that needs to be signed off by the folks on your cap table. There's no dynamic around international investors. They get pulled into the same structure. So there's no kind of There's no nuance there between an international investor and a US based investor. And WeFunder manages all of the pooling and the cap table dynamics to the extent that if there's a liquidation event and you get acquired or you IPO, we will facilitate the distributions to all of the investors. So we manage all of that back end, for every single company. And our business model is just a flat 7.5% of whatever is raised. So that 7.5% is the only fee that WeFunder charges to launch a campaign. That's for managing all the back-end infrastructure as well as the promotion to our audience.
And then the other one's for you too, the next one, which is how do you, well, actually it's maybe for the both of us, but how do you establish a valuation of a company from having like revenue streams or like basically, is it required when you talk to an angel or a VC? So you want to go first and then I can go right after?
Yeah, for sure. So founders upload an investment contract. That's generally a safe or a convertible note that has a valuation cap. That's what investors are buying when they come in and check out on WeFunder, and you set that valuation cap. The reason that we have the lead investor stakeholder in our on our platform is we want that lead investor to be an accredited investor who knows what who knows what they're doing. That's kind of doing the due diligence on the valuation. It has to be priced right if you're going to be successful. You do see that kind of like, oh, if I can set it wherever I want, I'm going to set it twice as much as where I should. And that's where campaigns really struggle. So our team also does a sniff test and gives feedback on where founders set valuations. But our hope is that you're bringing in a lead investor who knows what they're doing, that can help set that valuation in the right place.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, it's the problem that founders often have is that there is no set standard of how to set valuations on these things. So people think it's totally subjective. It is subjective, but you have to be in the ballpark of what companies your stage are doing, because investors are going to be seeing that alongside all the other companies that they're seeing who are in your stage as well. And so the best way of doing that, and we followed the same logic when we did our fundraise, the best way of doing this, in my opinion, is look at median data for all US companies at your stage, seed stage, pre-seed stage, whatever, right? Regardless of how much traction you have, unless you have like astronomical amounts of traction, which pulls you out of the ordinary, right? Just look at the median data and set that as your cap. And that's just, you will never raise any eyebrows or any questions from investors, because believe me, that's not the place where you want to get hung up. Right? You want to get, basically, you want to move past those minor things at that point, because you want to get that investor's money in a way that they actually will help you raise other money from other of his friends and his family or her network or whatever, right? So set a very standard, don't try and reinvent any wheels here. That's not where you want to play with. That's not what you want to fight. Don't pick the wrong fight would be my advice there.
Yeah.
And the next one I think is for me, right? How do we go about determining if what we do is fit for SBIR funding? Okay, so Jill, I have two good answers for you. One of them is on our platform, TurboSBIR.com, we have a grant search or an opportunity, funding opportunity search feature, which is completely free to use. You don't even need a credit card to use it. So sign up, log in with an account, go in there, put your topic or whatever you do as a company, put some things in there. And if you find things that pop up, most likely you're very, very eligible. The other resource is us. Just reach out to us, ask us, send me an email with a one-liner of what you do, and I can tell you straight away if you're a good fit or not. And then obviously, if you want a deep dive, then we can work with you as a customer as well. The other thing also is you can just Google, type your whatever you do as a company plus SBIR. And generally what that pulls up is it pulls up companies that when they win SBIRs, they usually do things like press releases or whatever. And most often you'll pull up some company that has won an SBIR in your space. And that tells you that there's basically, if somebody has funded that in the past, then there's no reason why you can't be funded either. So lots of those resources for you, which are all free. Don't need to pay for any of those things. And what's the average number of, this one is with you, Justin. What's the average age of investors? And do they have interest in solving health problems? Oh man, this is a great question.
Wait, where is this? Where is this question?
It's right after
Oh,
Jill's
okay.
question.
Gotcha, gotcha. Um, so okay. So first I'm going to take Burks, which is, do niche companies do well on WeFunder? Um, yeah, for sure. It really depends on kind of, I think this is a very individualistic conversation where it's like, if you're doing something super, super niche that nobody understands, maybe not, but we've had a ton of kind of science driven companies that had like very complex technologies, but the technologies were designed to do something that everybody could understand, helping with diabetes or helping with climate change or helping with water conservation. So it really depends kind of what that niche feeds into and what those core themes are around that niche that I think have the most relevance to WeFunder. But a lot of times I'll kind of evaluate that one by one with founders and be like, okay, yeah, this seems to kind of fit within our within our model.
And just jump in there, Justin. I would just say that actually for everyone on the call, if you guys want to have a chat with any one of us individually, just reach out to either Justin or me, whoever you know, right? And just ask for an intro. Like, or
Yeah,
both of us are making ourselves available to help you guys out.
for sure. Then in terms of the data referenced, you know, generally speaking, companies that launch on WeFunder are in that seed stage to Series A. That's typically what you're seeing on the platform, where it's like we have traction, we have momentum, we have something tangible here, and there's a clear pathway for us to get from step 2 to step 3. Doesn't do as well in this idea phase, although it can still be applied in in the context of, hey, I need to raise money from friends and family, and WeFunder can provide that infrastructure. But generally speaking, you're looking at seed stage to Series A companies in that like $5 to $15 million valuation cap range. But if you go to the WeFunder website, you'll see a pretty big range of different types of companies that are using it. So I'm not sure if a median is kind of a relevant data point. I think one of the most important pieces is our average raise is 450K. And founders on average generate 60% of the dollars raised from their network. So those are two relevant data points. I think that, for the most part, it's like if the founder has real kind of investors and juice from their network and their community, the likelihood that it'll translate and be paralleled in terms of interest and engagement and investments from WeFunder's community is highly likely.
And then you obviously have had lots of health companies on WeFunder do well as grants and contra. I mean, both those. I mean, health is something that everybody understands, especially with the past year has made it Main Street, right?
Right.
Keeping health on the main map. Everybody
Yeah.
now understands biotech to some degree. People are talking about vaccines in a way that they actually are talking. Like they're using verbiage that otherwise only scientists used to use, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's
In
definitely something.
a good way to get the pulse on our end is just go to our explore page and look at the top 20 most popular companies on the platform and kind of who are they, what stage are they at, what are they raising, how much momentum have they generated, how are they positioning their story. It's an easy way to kind of get insight into who's taking advantage of this. I don't know, Rupak, do you have a comparable kind of way for folks to learn more about the types of deals that have been successful on TurboSBIR?
I can talk to them about it, but we don't because it's some like we have IP, regulations that we can't publicize unless the companies want us to. We don't really do that, but I can tell them about the kinds of companies that have been successful. I don't give out names because of that reason, but and also like the entire award search database is available for us as well. So I can look at all past awardees like I have thousands and thousands of companies who I have the database for, where I can look up in any area, any field of science or tech, has any company been successful, and I can tell you exactly which ones, when, which agency, all of that stuff. We have all that data, so we can definitely help. Beyond doing, so I have another question. Beyond doing the application, what more can be done for government funding, the equivalent of going and pitching to investors? So Peter, with government funding, so governments use grants and contracts as a vehicle to invest in companies. There's no other vehicle that the government uses to put money into companies. It's either a contract of some sort or it's a grant of some sort. Uh, if you're asking more about whether TurboSBIR is planning on doing other things beyond government funding, absolutely. Like my relationship with Justin is essentially one of those things, right? Where our companies, when they're done with their grants or whatever, or when they win their grants or whatever, my first thing generally is I'll talk to Justin, right? How can we help them double this money, right?
Yeah.
Like that's always, I want all of you guys to have all the amount of money that you guys would need, right?
Right.
And Justin does the same thing with me. Like he's looking at all these companies and he finds one that has R&D going on in there. Like, you should really talk to Rupak and apply for some of the stuff.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how we're going about it too.
We'll do last question and then a final statement from you, Rupak. I'll have the last word here. Last question is, shall the company still need corporation lawyer to do the legal paperwork? No, WeFunder manages all of the legal paperwork. You can upload a custom investment contract, from a lawyer, or you can just use our templated contracts for safes or convertible notes, which is what most companies choose to do. But that's the big benefit, is we manage all the legal stuff. All right, Rupak, last word.
Intent, man. I'm always all about it. Think long term. Don't be myopic with your startups. Have intent that to want to do this really well, and take all the guidance and help that all of us can provide to really help you out. We're all on your side here. None of us are trying to scam you for anything at all over here. It's our mission, and that's why we've made it our mission to help companies like you. We could have done anything. My market rate right now, I could have made double the amount of money that I make here, right? Doing a job somewhere. But there's a reason why we made this our mission, right? To help folks like you. So get the help and have the intent to do it in all sorts of ways that we can. And then Justin, I'll leave it to you, man.
Yeah, first, I'd like to thank everyone for joining. We appreciate you taking the time out of your day to listen to us. I hope it was valuable. We would love your feedback. If you're interested in the WeFunder stuff, you can contact me directly. It's justin@wefunder.com. I'd be happy to chat with you. To kind of echo what Rupak is saying, the public benefit charter that we have at WeFunder and the impact-focused work that we do is all about being founder first, and we want to help founders raise money faster and easier, and get them back to building their business. That's really the ethos of the company and why we're doing this. If there's anything that I can do to be helpful, I see myself as a steward for founders and entrepreneurs. So thank you again for joining. I hope it was valuable, and yeah, please be in touch with me if you're interested in WeFunder. I'm sure the same applies to Rupak.
Absolutely. And we've left both our email IDs there for you guys. Reach out to us. We'll be very, very happy to help you guys. Justin, I hope I got your email right.
Yeah, we're good. Appreciate the good vibes, everybody. If you're in San Diego, look us up. We'll meet up for a beer, and have an amazing rest of your day and a good end of your week.
Yeah. Take care, everyone. Thanks a lot for joining. Cheers.
Bye.
Thanks a lot, Justin.
Thank you, guys.
Love you, Jordan.
You do.
Nice, Rupak.
That was good, man. Yeah, it was.
I'm jumping into another one right now. I got another presentation just like this back for 1 o'clock. So
wow.
It was good to see you, brother. I thought this was awesome, and I hope it was valuable.
You too, man. I absolutely think it was. I think the founders got a lot out of it, and I'm sure folks from your side also. I'm hoping that they found it valuable too.
Yeah,
this was great, dude. Great combo. Looking forward to doing another one soon.
Will you send me the recording so I can send it to anybody who didn't show?
Sure, man. I will do.
Awesome. Cheers, homie.
All right.
Talk to you.
Take care.